Upon release, Nahida was the face of the meta. For the low investment or free-to-play player, what you could get from Hyperbloom, Nilou Bloom, Alhaitham Spread, and other Nahida teams was absolutely unparalleled, particularly given the amount of investment required. She dominated team recommendations, dominated tier lists, and was generally considered by a lot of people to be the best or one of the best characters in the game. Almost 2 years later, however, Nahida has received surprisingly few new teammate synergies, extremely limited improvements to the best Nahida teams, and although she is still a great pull for a low investment player, I am quite confident in saying that Nahida is falling off. Welcome to Jello Impact, where we build and test every single character to help you decide who you want to wish for and build. Now, I want to start off by saying that this is my opinion, and I have had opinions before, and sometimes I don't always communicate them perfectly, so I want to be very clear. This is a similar thing to my Kazuha take, where people were saying Kazuha was a must pull, Kazuha was amazing, and I was just pushing back saying I think he's a bit overrated, still amazing, but a bit overrated, and not every account may need him. And I sort of doubled down on this, and then eventually I just needed to readjust how I was talking about him because people thought I was saying that he wasn't good, or people thought I was saying that he was bad. In a similar way, I do not think Nahida is bad. If you play Nahida teams, you need Nahida. She is an absolute staple for a bunch of teams. She is a must-pull for a lot of players, but she has fallen off. What I mean by that is the best teams in the game no longer use her, even the best free-to-play teams, and with every new character and every new synergy that comes out, she becomes less and less necessary. Basically, like Genshin wrote themselves into a corner. They released Hyperbloom, which is so strong at a baseline and just so over-the-top powerful for a low investment player that ever since then, they have had no choice but to power creep both ease of use for building characters and just releasing stronger characters. Around the time of Nahida, we were still getting DPSs like Wanderer, who's a solid pick, but the thing is he needs very specific artifact stats. He doesn't have over-tuned multipliers. He doesn't have crazy quality of life. The amount of investment it takes to get a character like Wanderer, or Zhao, or Ganyu, or Raiden, or Hu Tao, the amount of investment it takes most of these characters to reach the level of, say, a Nahida Hyperbloom team, or an Alhaitham Hyperbloom team, or a Nilou team, the amount of investment it takes is a lot of resin investment, and casual players weren't really ready for that type of investment. So what did Genshin do? They released DPSs like Neuvillette, damage supports like Farina, and artifact sets like Marechaussee Hunter, and then the Obsidian Codex, which just provides unparalleled amount of stats, and particularly crit stats, which are notoriously difficult to get from farming artifacts. If you were a very serious player, you had a bunch of teams that could compete with Hyperbloom. If you had really good artifact quality on those teams, you weren't seeing a huge improvement. But if you didn't have great artifacts, that's where Hyperbloom really shined. Yeah, you definitely want good artifacts for your Yolan, for your Xingqiu, but such a high percentage of your damage just came from having EM stats on your Kuki, and the team is so easy to play. You just press random buttons and do tons of damage. Why would anyone play anything else? People just said, hey, just play Hyperbloom. Just play Hyperbloom. Such an easy recommendation. And still to this day, when I boot this up, I have no issues 36 starring in well under the time limit. It's very easy, very simple, no resets, just normal attack and go. And so they needed to release characters like Neuvillette with insane over-the-top multipliers, crit stats to match the ease of getting the damage. The thing is, though, if you were willing to invest a bit more and use more resin and get more artifacts and better artifacts, a Neuvillette type of team, a Farina team, a Mualani team, an Arlecchino team, they do so well at a baseline. But if you invest the resin, then they do even better than Hyperbloom. So they hit the Hyperbloom level for like a low medium investment type of resin investment. And if you're willing to spend more, then they outclass Hyperbloom. And all the new DPSs, even Kinich, like, yeah, maybe he doesn't hit super high levels, but with the ease that you can hit those levels is very, very relevant. Characters like Nilou, which were unmatched for a lot of AoE scenarios, on top of being easy to build, basically no one recommends Nilou anymore because she does have some drawbacks, and frankly, Neuvillette just doesn't have those drawbacks. He's just so easy to play, and he doesn't get stonewalled by Dendro immune enemies. But more importantly, he also doesn't get stonewalled by both Dendro and Cryo shields. And he's much less conditional. He can do damage in any type of AoE, whereas Nilou needs a certain type of AoE to really, really pop off. But it's not just the new DPSs, it's not just the artifact sets. It's also the fact that we just haven't had any great new teams for Nahida. Sure, can you throw her onto a Keqing team? Yes. Can you throw her onto a Mualani team? Yes. Do these work pretty well? Sure. But they don't work as well as Emily. And because in the Pyro Nation, Genshin has decided that burning is the new Dendro meta, and Nahida just isn't super great for burning given the fact that we have Emily. It's also the year of multi-wave. Multi-wave abysses have been non-stop in the abyss. Even multi-wave bosses we've had now where you fight one group of enemies and then a boss. And aside from being paired with DPSs that have flexible rotations, Nahida's really not good in multi-wave. Emily has no such restrictions. She has a long field time for her skill and works just perfectly well in multi-wave. And there's a ton of very strong Pyro or Dendro characters that she can play with. And I personally feel like with the release of Mawika, Emily will get even more teams. And I do not think that Emily has power crept Nahida. Hyperbloom is still very strong. Alhaitham is still one of the strongest teams in the game. But it really just used to be, hey, just play Hyperbloom. And nowadays, I do want to talk about the pros, right? Because for a new player, you're getting Nahida, you're getting Xingqiu, and you're getting Kuki on this banner coming up. And it is so easy to get up and running. Kuki uses free-to-play craftable. Xingqiu can use Fav or Sacrificial. Your Nahida can use Widsith or some other free-to-play weapon, and you can just throw on your other character, whether it's Yelan, or maybe throw a Chlorand, although that doesn't quite work super well here, but maybe you throw Farina, maybe you throw Alhaitham, maybe you throw whatever, and it easily hits your 36 stars. So if you're the type of person that wants an easy, simple, low-investment 36 star, yeah, you just farm some Gilded Dreams, Deepwood Memories, and then Strongbox for Emblem, and you're good. You're done. And it's super simple, super easy farming. It's so good. But I thought about doing like an updated Nahida guide, and I'm going to link my Nahida guide at the end because it is still up to date. There's barely any new teams. What are the new teams? Yeah, I think the new ones are just Keqing and Mualani. And, you know, you can check out my Keqing and Mualani guides to see how you want to use Nahida with them. But you definitely don't want to be pulling Nahida for them. Characters, we've had so much emphasis on increasing actual damage. So like Farina giving huge damage bonus. It's just buffing that we haven't seen in the game. And they doubled down with Xilonen, giving even more powerful bonuses for damaging characters, like not transformative reactions, but characters that use elemental damage bonus that take advantage of resistance shred. So the release of new powerful characters that are easy to build, the release of artifact sets that make them easy to build, the release of new synergies that don't work with Nahida but work with other characters, and the release of very powerful buffers that benefit non-transformative team types. And yes, I know Alhaitham's best team does use Farina, but it's not very common and it's not the best use of Farina overall. But characters like Xilonen and Farina buffing like more traditional damage types. All that being said, I do not think that like Nahida is doomed. I don't think that she will totally fall off. So I think she's falling off, but I don't think that she will fall off. I don't think that she will end up being really bad or useless or anything like that, because I think that there is still room for a dedicated Hyperbloom character. Yeah, we have Kuki. She's basically a dedicated Hyperbloom character, but I think we can get something more. And maybe it's not a healer. Maybe it's a character that does lots of damage. Maybe we get a dedicated Hyperbloom Hydro character that buffs Dendro damage while applying lots of Hydro. Maybe they power creep Alhaitham. I don't know about that. Seems the least likely to me. Alhaitham's already plenty strong, but they could release like a Dendro character that specifically works with Hyperbloom and that maybe buffs the Hyperbloom reaction or something. I still think there's room for them to release a more dedicated support for Nilou. She's kind of just throws on whatever random characters. I think she has a ton of future potential. They just haven't really pushed it. They basically said, hey, here's a really strong team archetype, and just blew up the meta with Dendro, and then just went totally hands off for like a region and a half now. And now the cracks are starting to show. We're finally starting to see hey, hyperbloom and dendro, it isn't all that it once was, but I literally think we've just been getting so many overpowered characters that haven't pushed it out of the meta, but have made it much less relevant, especially when you get to higher investment. That's the final thing I wanted to talk about, is constellation power creep, because Nahida, we all know that Nahida's C2 is broken, but her C2 is the new C1 for most characters. Novelette C1, Farina C1, Arlecchino C1, they have crazy C1s, Mulan C1, they're so powerful. About on powerful with Nahida's C2, and considering players who go for constellations often have good artifact investment as well, at least I hope you do, or maybe you're just doing it so you don't have to have good investment. Regardless, it makes the difference even bigger at higher investment when you start getting 5-star weapons. They generally benefit the traditional damage types more than they do the dendro transformative reaction damage types. So that's what I think. Nahida is falling off. She has not fallen off. She's still a great choice for low investment accounts. She's not a great choice for min-maxers and higher investment accounts, but there is hope for the future for more dedicated characters, because they've really just lacked a lot of synergy for Nahida right now. Just so you know, I still think she's tier 0. I still think she's S tier. And yes, I have adjusted Arlecchino to be a bit higher than Mulan because she is currently a much more consistent character despite having lower highs. So I do listen to your feedback. Let me know your thoughts on this, and it's totally fine if you think I'm off on this, if you think that I'm out to lunch, if you think that I am crazy, but I've thought about this a lot, and I really think that I am correct on this. I'm on board on this. But if you are a free-to-play player, hey, this banner is awesome. If you're a free-to-play player, if you're new, if you're trying to 36-star, if you're trying to have a great start to your account, hey, hyperbloom, you get Nahida, Kuki, and Xingqiu all in one banner. That's crazy value. I'm not trying to downplay that. It is crazy value. It is very awesome. If you're trying to be really efficient about how you 36-star, that's a really smart banner to wish on. So let me know your thoughts. Take care. Bye for now.